Hi, and welcome to another video. This time let's have a look into a package called FakeAsync. This is a helpful package to test things that could take time, but we don't want them to take time in case we are running unit tests, because we want our unit tests to be as quick as possible. So let's say we have a function that would take some time, for example 5 seconds. However, it would be waiting this 5 seconds, or there is some action that has to take actual 5 seconds, depending on a clock. We can fake this time with this library by using this FakeAsync function and then calling this async.elapse with the time we want to elapse. So it's like going into the future without actually going into the future. Before we continue, have a look that this library is using the other package called clock. We will see where it is used, however, maybe the details are something for another video. So if you are looking for more content like this, then subscribe right now, like this video, give a comment if you will have any questions or maybe any reactions to this video. But for now, let's continue. Over here in my Dart playground, I prepared a very simple example. So we have this class with this main function that is completely not necessary right now, but we have this animate function, which takes some seconds as an argument and it runs feature.delayed with the duration of these seconds that were passed, after which we are returning 100. Secondly, I prepared a test over here, which is testing this function animate for. We have two tests. We have one test over here using this FakeAsync library, and we have second test over here which is not using this library. So in the first case, we are using this FakeAsync function coming from this library. Inside, we are animating for 10 seconds first, then we are expecting the actual to be 100 because that was something we expected for this function to return. And finally, we are elapsing the time for 10 seconds. With this, we will not have to wait this 10 seconds, but actually the test will run instantly. In the second case, we are animating for 3 seconds. However, because we are not using this library, then this test will have to wait for actual 3 seconds. In order to run this, let's use Dart test. Let's give it the reporter to type JSON. There is an option in Vim to prettify this kind of a JSON output, but unfortunately this is not an actual JSON. If you can see, we have many different JSONs combined and then we have some text at the end. Both Python beautifier of JSON and JQ are not really working well. So let's copy that and let's go to JSON formatter and validator. So first of all, we get some information about the version protocol, whatever, but we have time over here which is set for 0 at the beginning. Now, if we scroll down, we have some test suite over here, which is this file, and then we have a test. So there is the first test that was run, and then we have time again, but this is the event when the test started, but what we are looking for is this event test done. So running this test took 499 milliseconds. The first test done, and then we have the second test, and down here, let me scroll that. We can see this is where the second test is done, and now the time is 3535 milliseconds. This time is basically the combined time from when the test running was started. So at the beginning it was 0, then first test finished, it was about 500, and second test finished, and now when we are done we have 3535, which means that the first test ran for about 500 milliseconds together with the whole setup of the test suite, and the second test ran for about 3 seconds as we expected. And that's basically everything about how this library is working. But I wouldn't be myself without going a little bit into the code and looking how this works. For that reason I have cloned this library over here, so let's have a look. First of all, we have this FakeAsync function over here that I have used in the test. And the description here says that it runs callback, which we pass to it, in a zone where all the asynchrony is controlled by an instance of a FakeAsync. So first of all, what is FakeAsync? FakeAsync is a class defined in this library. And if we have a look further into this function FakeAsync over here, you can see that all it does is it just creates an instance of FakeAsync class and then calls this run method with a callback on it. So we are passing the callback that was passed to this function into this run function. And then you can see when this callback is actually run, it also as an argument returns an instance of this FakeAsync. And this is important because on this FakeAsync instance, we are calling later this elapse method, which is elapsing the time. We will get to that. So down here you can see we have a couple of parameters. We have, for example, a clock, and this is a clock that we want to fake. So usually a clock would give you the actual time, but we want to give it the time that we want it to be. But what's important for us is the run function. Let's go straight to it. The documentation is as follows. It runs a callback in a zone, so the same basically that we've seen above in the function. Let's have a look into this run function. What happens here? First of all, we are running a zone. If you don't know what zones are, maybe there will be another video later in the future. on that. But if not, then have a look right now at Google, so not to make this video too long. Then it's running this with clock method. This is a method coming from the clock dependency, and it also gets the clock. So with this clock right now, we will be running this callback. So on this clock, maybe when the time is changing, this callback is then run. And we are running this run zoned over here because a zone can have a specification. And here we are setting this specification in this parameter zone specification. And then in this parameters create time and create periodic time, we are creating a timer, which is done with this function over here, create timer. Let's go to it. This function then gets a duration, then gets the callback that we passed to the function in the first place, and then also it specifies whether this timer is periodic or not. What happens inside over here is that we have this timer that is an instance of a fake timer, which again gets this callback over here, defines whether it's periodic and stuff like this. Then we add this timer to a list of timers, and finally we turn it to the zone specification. However, what is the fake timer? And the definition of that is just below over here. We have fake timer, and this is a timer, and it implements the timer interface. In other words, we want to have a timer, but a timer that does not give us any actual ticks like per second or per microsecond or whatever, but we want to be able to control the ticks in this timer. This is why we created our own fake timer implementation of a timer. Inside over here you can see that we have, for example, this tick field, which is later incremented every time this timer is being fired with this fire method. In this fire method, you can see that this tick is incremented. And then also later, dependlessly whether it's periodic or not, we are calling our callback over here. So this is where the callback is actually also called. The next question is where this fire method is called. Let's see. Here we have the definition of fire method, and here is where it's called. Let's navigate. That's the fire timers while, which is defined on the FakeAsync class. What it does is it invokes the callback for each timer until some predicate returns false. So first of all, we have this predicate, which is a parameter to this first timers while function, which is a function, and it also gets as a parameter later when it's called a fake timer. So this is some parameter function that we will run, this predicate. Then in the body of this function, we have a for loop, which is an infinite for loop, as you can see. It will run until something else breaks it. And there are two options to break it. First of all is if there are no any timers, then we don't want to run it because there is no time to elapse. And then you can see over here that we take a timer with this min by function. What it does is it takes the minimum value ordered by this callback over here from these timers. So these timers have, for example, 3 timers, then it's compared against each of these timers' next call value, and the one that has smaller next call will be returned to the timer. And then this timer is passed to this predicate, which comes as an argument to this function. And then if this returns false, then we are actually breaking this for loop. However, as long as we are not breaking this for loop, then we are elapsing the time. So we are setting the time what it will be next, we are faking the time that has actually passed, and we are also firing the timer over here, which will in the end just call the callback as we've seen. So the last question that we may have over here is how this fire timers while function is called. So if we check over here, we have 2 runs, but let's have a look into this one right now. And this is the elapse function that we've seen before. By calling this elapse on async over here, we want this 10 seconds to pass when they didn't actually pass. And this is that function over here. So it gets the duration, and then after some checks over here, it's calling this fire timer while function for us. And this is how we are faking that some time has passed, even though this time didn't actually pass. And we can test our function a lot quicker than waiting for 10 seconds over here. As a closing note, I know this is complicated and we didn't go into details of everything in this library, and it may feel like we didn't understand maybe everything over here. So I highly encourage you also to have a look on your own and try to read and understand this a little bit more, at least as a brain exercise, because it's a very interesting and not so simple to understand library. Of course, if you're a beginner, then probably this is not something for you, and you should come back here after maybe a couple of months and then maybe try to understand what happens over here. But now, if you liked this video and it helped you to understand something, or maybe you learned at least how to use this to improve your test in some way, then please like this video, leave a comment, and definitely subscribe to this channel for more content like this. But for now, I called you to death and I'll see you the next time. Bye bye.